thing on the cross back here, because this is an Episcopal church, and it's so y'all know what Fat Tuesday is. Well, it's the day before Ash Wednesday, and Ash Wednesday begins Lent. So for the traditional churches, all the corpus, the crosses that have Jesus' body on them are covered, and so they'll be covered until Easter morning. So it is a cool time, because this is kind of the time, like I read that Jolie was giving up. Where were you giving up? Starbucks. She's giving up Starbucks for Lent. So it's always a time, a lot of times, for good reflection. And I think it's a great time to have started this ministry, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight a little bit. But so that's an explanation of that. So it'll be very exciting come Easter, because it'll be, they're not allowed to have flowers or anything in here. But I want to have my Ganesh tree of life up there with Jesus. So. But anyway, so I have prepared some stuff for y'all today, and I don't like to wear shoes, and I don't like to be over there, so I'm going to sit here. And so I appreciate y'all coming, because especially you guys, it's so nice to meet you. I feel like we're a kindred spirit. Yeah. And then, of course, Scott, Jolie, Tricia, and Tina couldn't be here tonight, but Tina, I appreciate y'all being my foundation for this, because as long as it's just us, it doesn't matter, then we can do it. But I appreciate you, because if we do grow, I'm going to need more and more people to help and stuff. But so anyway, I'm just glad you're here. I am excited. I prepared way better than when I was at the house. I didn't prepare the way I've prepared for tonight. And then just in case I wanted to have a recording, so I made it last night in my room. So I made it at work, and the angle is so bad I look like Attila the Hun. So I want to start, because the name of this message tonight is Only Love Is Real. And I named it because there's a singer named
What was it?
Only Love Is Real. And it's named from a song by MC Yogi that I really like. But anyway, because that's the intent of this message. So I'm going to start, like I always do, by reading a couple of readings, and then I'll talk about them. And the thing is, when it's this small, I don't care. We can ask questions and stuff. If we get where there's too many people, then we'll do talking in there. But when it's just us, we can do that. We can, but we'll do the group session in there, so we can drink coffee while we do it. Okay, so the first reading is from Matthew 6:22 through 23. And it says, "The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness?" And I'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, another thing, because I just met Maria, and Tricia hasn't been here in a minute. The reason, I'm going to explain a little bit, because as you see on the back of the bulletin, I'm real into the chakras. And one of the things that the Spirit told me recently that's real important, that just like the Hindus, we need to be aligned vertically. And so the Om symbol represents enlightenment or oneness with God, or samadhi, like the Hindus call it. But then for Jesus to really, what he wants from us is to achieve, that's his job, is to help us achieve enlightenment. And then he wants us, like in that story about the transfiguration that I read y'all last time, because when they went up on the mount, Jesus turned, white as light. And then Moses and Elijah showed up with him. And so Peter, and I think John, was it John? Peter and John, they're like, "Yo, Lord, let's build 3 tents up here, for the 3 of y'all. And basically, let's pitch our tents on top of the mountain and stay up here and be on top of the mountain." And Jesus was like, "No," and just came down off the mountain and said, "Don't even tell anybody about this." And so that's one of the things, to really, to be able to be used for his purposes, which is this time is very, very important, because we're living in a society of alternative facts, and so we need truth, and we need vehicles of truth, and that's what we are. So, it's great to be enlightened, but if you're going to follow him, it's not about sitting up on top of the mountain and being enlightened. It's about coming on back down to the heart chakra and extending in love to others. And so that's why, therefore, and then of course the vertical alignment with the horizontal alignment makes a cross, okay? But that's what this is all about, because those are what my symbols are. So anyway, and I want to read this second reading before I start talking about it. And this is from A Course in Miracles. And so these are some readings that are just from like the first few pages of the book. And one thing about Course in Miracles, when I got on the path in 1986, and I was in a bookstore back when they had bookstores, where there's like Taylor's bookstore down on Camp Bowie, and I was in that store one time, and it's like the Course in Miracles was calling my name. And so that book has always been trying to come in my life, and I would read it and I didn't understand it. But what's cool now, because I read it now, and it really has all the things in it that God's taught me personally. So it's real cool, because I think that's the thing. If we can really understand what that means, you can get a lot from reading that book, if you understand it, And so that's what we're asking for, is discernment, so we can read it ourselves and understand it. But I understand it now, or at least my own understanding. So I want to read this. It says, "This is a Course in Miracles. The Course do not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance." And it says, everything that comes from love is a miracle. Miracles reawaken the awareness that the spirit, not the body, is the altar of truth. You are a miracle, capable of creating in the likeness of your creator. Everything else is your own nightmare and does not exist. Only the creations of light are real. You should be thankful to God for what you really are. The children of God are holy, and the miracles honor their holiness, which can be hidden but never lost. Miracles honor you because you are lovable. They dispel illusions about yourself and perceive the light in you. Thus they atone for your errors by freeing you from your nightmares. By releasing your mind from the imprisonment of your illusions, they restore your sanity. And so basically, this whole book is about that if we're willing to extend in love and to see the Spirit in our brothers and sisters, that we will see it in ourselves too. And we will realize that we're all one Spirit. But back to Jesus' reading, when he's talking about if the lamp is the body of the eye, he's totally talking about having a single third eye. Because he's saying, if therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. So in other words, if you perceive with truth, your whole body's going to be full of light. And if you're familiar with the Bible, Jesus was always, it was also in the Old Testament too, because they would bring it up into the New Testament as him fulfilling prophecies. But he would tell his own disciples, always seeing but never understanding, always hearing but never listening. So basically that's what he was saying is, that's the thing with the truth message, is you got to have, like he would always say, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. But that's one of the things he's really, because needless to say, in the tumultuous society we're living in right now, I've often prayed, and it's like, what's this about? And they said, everything's right on schedule, because what's going on right now is we are really being shaken, and really what is happening is that people that are in search of truth are on one camp, and the ones that just want to buy into what everybody tells them is in the other. So it's really making a line, and it's making us really, really motivated to stand up for truth, which is a very good thing. And so that's what this is about, is really understanding that if you perceive, if you think you're just a human being, then you are totally deceiving yourself. I've told, y'all know me, but my new book is called Delusions of Insignificance. And that's because we all have the feeling that we don't matter somewhere deep inside of us. Because we live in a society that tells us what makes you matter is if you're rich. If you're rich, you have a Lexus, you have a house over in Rivercrest. And it doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with those things. But for some people, that's their status. I'm ashamed to say this, but because I grew up here in Fort Worth going to a private school, and so I was a privileged little brat, and I didn't know it, because I really thought that someday that, my first car was going to be a Jaguar XJ6, and someday I was going to buy Shady Oaks Country Club, and it was going to be my house. So that's the way I thought. But so needless to say, it was a rude awakening to get out in the real world as an adult. And so I wasn't quite equipped for it either. But that's the thing, is it's about finding out what really matters. And so to me, the reading about from the Course and Jesus is talking about the same thing, because we have to let go of the illusions. And that's why I like that song, Get Out of Your Own Way, because that's a perfect song for this, because that's the thing. We're in our way. And, you know, like I've told you guys before, you know, I love AA and I like the big book, but one of the most damaging sentences in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the one that says, always be hard on yourself and easy on others. How about be easy on yourself and easy on others? You know, because God is really, and that's just the thing. You guys are either going to believe that God really talks to me or he doesn't. You know, because in 1986, I got a call to this, I got a call to ministry in 1986, and it's really funny because we were talking about that today, because he told me I was going to be a minister in the 21st century. And then I was like, well, I want to be a mother. But he's like, well, you are, but you're going to be a minister in the 21st century. So I really thought that I just started going around telling people, hey, I'm a minister, I'm a spiritual leader in the 21st century, so come on, you know, we're going to start a movement. And seriously, you know, I was accused of having a psychotic break. You know, for real. And thank God that's been over 30 years now. And, you know, Jesus says, by their fruits you'll know them. And so from the outcome of my life, I have total confidence that this voice that guides me is him. Because he's taught me everything I know. You know, you'll notice as you get to know me better, I'm very well read, because during the last 33 years, anything he teaches me, he would always give me a book to back it up, to show me, here is the validation or the confirmation that what I'm telling you is true. You know, and so I believe that, and so it's given me, I've read a lot of cool books, and that's why I'm able to access information like that, because I've been reading this whole time. I've been preparing for this for 33 years. And I've tried to do it before it was time, and it didn't work. So one thing I've learned from this is to know that if God tells you what he's going to do in your life, he's not saying, hey, go out there and do it. You know, he's saying, this is what's going to happen. Now you need to sit back and just wait for me to direct it. You know, because anytime I try to make stuff happen, I don't know about y'all, if I try to make it happen, it ain't happening. You know, it seems to get farther away from me. And so that's the whole thing too, is, you know, I always use my own personal experience as a parable sometimes, because it helps illustrate the story. But that's what we're going to talk about today, is because the first thing, you know, the first thing God ever said to me is, you are loved. It's not too late to change the path you're on, but you've got to turn and go the other way. But don't be afraid, for I am with you always, even until the end of time. So that was his first words to me. But then he gave me some direct downloads about the ministry, and we were laughing about it today, because he said, this is a call for an open forum. God desires reconciliation, and the peace of the world depends on it. And I'm really excited about this ministry, because this is the one where I was able to have the courage of my own convictions, not try to be an Episcopalian, not try to be an evangelical, and just stand up and be what I am. But this is a call for an open forum. You know, because that's the thing. I want this to be a place of miracles, because that's what I want you to realize, is that you are a miracle. And anything that you think that is not motivated by love is something you just made. It's not real. If you create with love, we make with ego. You know, and so the hard part about getting to the love part is sometimes we have to deconstruct that ego. And excuse my language, it's a rat bastard. You know, it's sometimes, it does fight for its life, because if you realize it's not real and drop it, it doesn't have an existence. But it's worth the dropping. So that's what, you know, the Course is talking about too, is we have to look at the things that block us from love's awareness. And so the first foundation of looking at the things that block us from love's awareness is looking at the negative self-talk. You know, my first books when I got on the path, this friend of mine gave me Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Own Life, and Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount, the Ten Commandments, and Power Through Constructive Thinking. So I cut my spiritual life on those books, because fortunately I was raised an Episcopalian, and I just wasn't paying attention, so I didn't have anything against it, but it wasn't really doing anything for me either. So I was never one of those people that thought God was, I didn't believe in God, you know, which was better really than believing that God is against me and going to get mad at me if I do something wrong and all that stuff. Because the thing in the Bible that's very, very true is it says God is for you, not against you. And that's so true. But I'm really glad that I learned about God with personal experience, but reading things like Emmett Fox. You know, and that's one of the things Emmett Fox says. I was originally, before I used the Course in Miracles reading, I was going to use some stuff from the Ten Commandments, talking about the commandment that do not take the name of the Lord in vain. And he talks about that, because here's the deal with a lot of us too. Besides looking at the negative ideas you have about yourself, you need to look at the negative ideas you have about God. You know, because like he said, if you say God's wrath, okay, that's a contradiction. Because God is love. Love cannot be wrath. Right. So anything you put over God is this, God is waiting for the final judgment, God, you know, or my favorite, God loves you so much that he tortured his son and sent him down here. Right. And then if you believe in him, you don't have to rot in the lake of fire for eternity. But if you don't, oh well, too bad. You know, that's hateful. That doesn't make sense. You know, but my experience with Jesus has been, hey, would you like to be out of hell? You know, and people like us, especially because most of us in this room are in recovery, we know what hell is. And so that's, first of all, you know, because I love that, because he talks about what, you know, the Course talks about. But see, the Course was written by Jesus. I don't know if y'all know the history on the Course, but this lady who was an atheist and this other psychologist, they were pondering the question, there's got to be a better way. And then all of a sudden, this spirit just started dictating to this atheist woman, and that's how Course in Miracles was born. But it's 1,000 pages long, you know, so it's like, it's not light reading, let's put it that way, but it's written by Jesus. And so it's the same words that you hear in church all the time, but it's spun differently. And I think that's exactly another thing, you know, I always play the first 10 minutes of my groups at work. I use that Calm app to work with them. And she talks about how, you know, we're born predisposed to learn more from negative experiences than positive experiences. And that's because our ancestors who were running wild in the woods, you know, with tigers, they had to really learn from their, you know, their fear and stuff taught them something. And so we're hardwired for fear and adrenaline to tell us when we're in danger and stuff. But in this society now, we're all just, our adrenal glands are shot. We're all just tripped all the time. And so that's the thing, and Jesus has told me so many times, really all he does is come in and change the spin on our energy system. You know, reverse it from being negative to positive. And so that's what he's done in my life, because he's the greatest cognitive restructurer I've ever known. Because I can be thinking of something, he's like, stop that, go apologize, shut up, you know, whatever. And so, but he always corrects me. And then, of course, I've learned to correct myself, too. Because I don't know about y'all, but when you start trying to practice positive thinking, if you go on a negative rampage, you don't quite feel good. You know, it makes you feel bad. But I want to talk about a couple of things to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. You know, because it's just like the same. If you believe negative things about God, that's what's going to seem true to you. And if you believe negative things about yourself, that's what's going to seem true to you. So in honor of that, the first thing I want to read you is something that was happening in the depths of my addiction. It's a perfect example, you know, of that your feelings aren't facts, but they seem like it. And that's something that's been very interesting too, because I've been journaling since I was 16, and when I wrote this book and told my story, I would tell my story based as if the way I was feeling in my journal was true. And then the Spirit told me to go back and read the journals in context and look at what was really going on. You know, and it gave me a whole different perspective on the book. But this is a perfect example of when, you know, just like it says, the truth wants to release you from your own nightmares. So this is from September 1st, 1988. In August of 1989, this period of darkness in my life ended with me making a suicide attempt. But this says, I got a ridiculous brainstorm to do some crank to suppress my appetite. It really messed me up. I haven't slept for 2 days and I'm depressed. I don't know what to do. I'm plunging ahead when I don't even know who I am or where I'm going. I just don't think I'm going to make it. I saw my therapist today and went to the eating disorder group. It's so obvious that I need to quit drinking and doing drugs again, but I don't feel up to it. It's too painful and I just can't handle it. I don't know which is worse, the drug addiction and alcoholism or the eating disorder. All I know is I'd rather be drunk than fat. I don't know if I'll ever sober up and fly right. The bulimia has me near death, vomiting blood, bloating, and severe headaches. I don't think that I'm ever going to get it together. The worst part is I don't even know if I want to. It's just too hard. I feel as though I'm doomed to live in darkness forever. So yeah, that's like, man, I mean, but that's dark. But see, I really thought all that was true. That's what I believed about my life. And so it was a very dark place to be. And in this book was a trial run for me to learn how to market books. But it was weird because when I put it together, when I got the contract and they agreed to publish, I only had 3 months to get it together. And the Spirit very specifically told me, don't say anything about the entries. You know, you use other people's words. Don't go in there trying to comment on the entries. And I understand that now because the book I'm working on now is the one where I'm going to teach on what was really going on and what was really happening. And so he left it clear, but I would always put a quote in after something to kind of show you something. And so I really love this quote because this is really the point. It says, it's not that we fear the place of darkness, but that we don't think we are worth the effort to find the place of light. And that's from one of my very favorite authors, Hugh Prather, who wrote this awesome book 100,000 years ago called Notes to Myself. And it was just, he was my inspiration for all this. But that's the thing, you know, when you're talking about thinking you're not worth finding the place of light. You know, and I know y'all all heard this, but you know, I'm 57 years old, so I was born in 1961 in the days of Mad Men. You know, when my dad's up putting his hand up his secretary's skirt and that kind of stuff. And so it was a not just unspoken rule, but spoken rule that girls are to be pretty. Girls are to be a sidearm. You know, girls can't be fat. My mother would say, you need to fix yourself up. You know, or you're not going to go anywhere without makeup, are you? And so needless to say, it was ingrained in me that it's totally unacceptable to be fat. You know, and I went to a private school and had to wear jumbo uniforms and all that. In the first 2 weeks they were being made, so I was teased and mocked at school. And of course I was drinking and drugging by then, so I just had this cocky bravado and whip your ass, you know, if you said anything to me. And all that kind of stuff. I didn't know I was hurting over it, you know, at all. But that's the thing. And then one time I was going to buy some new clothes, and this person said to me, why are you going to buy clothes? Because you're so fat and ugly, nobody's going to look at you anyway. So that became my mantra. You're so fat and ugly, nobody's going to look at you anyway. You're so fat and ugly, nobody's going to look at you anyway. And so I was full of self-loathing. You know, but then what happened is during that time I was telling you, you know, because it ended up with me, you know, obviously food was my drug of choice at first because my mother went to a mental institution at 8. And then when I found drugs and alcohol, that was the magic formula. And so all that feeling bad about myself would go away. And that's exactly why it was hard to get sober, because as soon as I wasn't drinking or using, just that, you're so fat and ugly, nobody's going to look at you anyway, would just come in on me. You know, and I would literally feel like I was going to kill myself because I was just so upset about it. But God's always saved my butt at the worst times. And so right after the suicide attempt, I had a second very major spiritual experience, which really changed my life. And so it changed my personality, let me put it that way. I was still, you know, doing a lot of the same actions, because I didn't quite understand then that if you're going to talk something, you need to walk it. But I was working on it. I was learning to talk it. But anyway, I had this friend, because I was like, you know, I used to go to Unity Church for about 12 years, and they've always been into metaphysics and all that stuff. And so I was all hyped up and talking about, you know, that we're you know, temples of the living God. And so this friend of mine tells me, you know, you're so egotistical. You need to ask God to show you yourself through His eyes so you can see what a sinner you are. Mm-hmm. And so I was real hopped up on God, and I'm like, fine, I'll do that. And I prayed that prayer. But it was really cool because, first of all, because when I first got into Louise Hay and Emmett Fox, you know, they're talking about affirmations. And the thing about affirmations, you know, because cognitive restructuring is looking at the negative and saying no to it, and then saying yes to the positive. And I didn't understand that part yet because I wasn't in touch with a lot of things because of my using. But I would practice affirmations. You know, and Jesus told me that just like you don't put old wine in new wine, or is it new wine in old wineskins or old wine in new wineskins?
New wine and old.
You don't put new wine in old wineskins.
Skins.
Right, which is the same thing as saying you don't put the new ideas without cleaning the old ideas out first, because you have to have new wineskins. And so that denial part's important. But so my affirmations started out where I'd stand in the mirror and I'd go, I love myself and accept myself just the way I am. And then that voice would come in and go, you fat slob. You know, and so that was not the greatest way to do affirmations, but I kept trying and I kept trying and nothing really happened. You know, but the thing with me and God is, you know, one time when I started doing prayer time, and I'd do like 30 minutes every day, and that made me feel a little better. And I started doing like an hour every day, and that made me feel a little better. And then you know, so on and so on. So I got Rob to do about 2 or 3 hours a morning, you know, every day. And I thought that's what I needed to be spiritual, okay? But after the prayer about showing myself through your eyes, one morning I walked in there, and I turned on the light, and I saw something I had never seen before. I was like, I could see behind the mask. And what I saw, I didn't see this great spiritual being, but I didn't see this horrible person either, because I realized right then, you've just been doing the best you can, you know? And so I just saw this person who wasn't bad or good, that just was, and was trying to do the best she could. And that was the first time when I looked in the mirror and said, I love you and accept you just the way you are. It's like it resonated. I mean, I meant it, you know, and that was a big change for me. And so that was the beginning of me starting to really do some of that hard work of letting go of those kind of ideas. But when I go back to that story about the prayer time, in the meantime, when I'm on my spiritual path, because I'd always been a server and stuff, and so I was the type of person that was like, I can never work a real job because I need too much time with God. I would tell people, well, if I don't spend at least 3 or 4 hours a day with God, then I'm not really suitable for, you know, being out in public. Well, when you spend 4 hours a day with God, you're not suitable for being out in public because you're a weirdo. You know, because you're just like, it's like the Big Book talks about, head in the clouds, feet not on the ground, you know. And so I was just this space character, you know. But what happened for us in 2007 is we lost everything. Because at that time we had a pretty cushy deal. You know, we were working for this ministry in Dallas. They had bought us a house in Bedford. So this isn't the first time I've ever used somebody else's church. We used that church, but he got fired, my ministry then was called More Than Conquerors, and so I was like thinking, well, I know God doesn't want me to quit More Than Conquerors, and then I ended up having to quit More Than Conquerors and go to work. And at first I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. You know, we call that the I can't thinking error in psychology, but then once I started working, I realized, wow, something's really changed with me because I can do this. And then I went back to school and got a bachelor's degree, became a counselor. And it's funny, because I didn't even realize this because I'm so used to reading this that sometimes I don't remember what's in the real journals. What's not in here is a bunch of F words, which are in the real journals. But one thing that I wrote in my journal back about 1989 is, here's my plan, here's my vision. I'm going to someday meet my spouse and have a family. Then after my kids are grown, I'm going to start my career as a drug and alcohol counselor. And I read that to him and thought, that's crazy. Because I didn't even remember that I wanted to be a drug and alcohol counselor. Because when I actually became a drug and alcohol counselor, that was just kind of by default because I couldn't figure out what else to do with my degree. But anyway, that was a perfect example. First, the example of just thinking so poorly about myself that I was always wanting to kill myself. And then the example of limiting myself so much with my beliefs. So when we do our meditation, especially when we do our journaling and discussion today, that's what I pray that the Spirit will speak to you. You know, this is the thing. I'm not here to try to give you a fish. I want to teach you how to fish. And that's why we have group process, because some of you already know how to fish real good. And so we can share that with each other. Because we're coming here where in the end, God needs to be talking to us all, you know, individually. And I have total confidence that's what's going to happen. But so that's the message, and it's called Only Love is Real. So the good news for you, if you're beating up on yourself for something that you've done, that you didn't know what you were doing when you did it, guess what? You're forgiven. Because that's what Jesus is all about, giving us truth for error. You know, as when we move in, it is Lent, but all these things she's got on the side of the church, those are the 12 stations of the cross when Jesus was leaving from, you know, carrying his cross to be crucified. And at the end, when he's up on the cross, or when they're putting him on the cross, he's crying out, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." You know, and to me, that's one of the most profound scriptures. Because if he's sitting there saying, "Forgive them, Father," they don't know what they're doing. These people who are executing me, they don't know what they're doing. That's exactly the thing for us. We don't know what we're doing when we do things that aren't motivated by love. You know, I've told this story before, but I just met you, so you don't know all my stories. So you're so good. I got a new guinea pig. but one time, I told you Mom went to a mental institution when I was about 8 years old, and I grew up. I had a dad who pretty much, you know, is your typical man of, you know, white guy, kind of misogynist, but didn't know it. Back then, everybody was like that. But I grew up hating women and thinking my mother was stupid and weak. You know, and I thought my mother didn't love me, because if she had loved me, she would have fought to have custody of me, because she lost us to my dad after she went to the hospital, and we never lived with her again. And then when I had my first daughter, who's 31 now, I was still active in my addiction, because she was born in 87, and just like I was just reading you that entry from 88. And so I had a really hard time parenting her. It would cause me a lot of anxiety. I couldn't really be alone with her. I didn't know what to do. And my mother and grandmother had to help me a whole lot with her. And I felt really guilty about it, you know. And then when I had my second daughter, 9 years later, I was well into my recovery. I was married to my husband. All my dreams had come true. I had a house in the suburbs and a tennis bracelet, you know, and didn't have to work. But I was so broken because it felt like being a mother for the first time. And so I felt terrible, because it's like, this is like being a mother for the first time. Where the heck was I back when it really was the first time? And I would pray and pray and pray, and the Spirit would say, "You did the best you could. Look at you now. You're doing better. Stop beating up on yourself." But I couldn't. It plagued me. And then one day, I was praying about it, and the Spirit said, "I'll tell you this. When you can forgive your mom, you can forgive yourself." And all of a sudden, when I realized, wow, Mom did not love me. Mom was sick. You know, and then realized that she went through something probably even worse than we did, because she lost all 3 of her kids and never got them back. But see, that set me free, because God was showing me, you did the best you could, she did the best she could, everybody's just doing the best they can. You know, and it's a time right now in our society that people need to start doing better. You know, and those of us that are spiritually inclined and seeking for truth and something better need to be getting together and doing stuff like this, because, you know, just like Jesus said, you're the light of the world. You know, and I think it was Teresa of Avila said, you know, Christ has no hands or feet on earth except for ours. You know, and so this isn't about doctrine or churchy. This isn't about all that. This is about really knowing Him and letting Him become your true self. He's the guide to your true self. And then it's really weird, because this is like, I don't know, you're old enough if you remember the double mint gum commercial, or double mints, two mints in one, or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's weird, because it's like there's 2 of us, and sometimes it's just like they're one of us. You know, and MC Yogi has a great song that talks about when he's doing service, we're one, but when not, we're together. And that's kind of the way it is with me and God, that when we're just hanging out in the car, it's like, so I know that sounds crazy, because I talk to myself in the car, but it's like there's 2 of us, but then when there just needs to be one of us, it's more like it's Him, you know, because that's the truth of who I am, and that's the truth of who you are. You know, I used to think that I was special, you know, because God talked to me all the time, and just like the Course, it's not what I read to you tonight, but the Course is Jesus saying, awe is not the proper response to me, because we're equals. I'm just your older brother. You know, what we have to have awe for is the reality of what we are and the grace that makes us that way. You know, and that's where awe goes. And it talks about, because time isn't real, the only purpose of time is to use it constructively to wake up. But every time supernatural love comes in, it collapses time a little bit more. You know, and so that's the thing. So he says, even though it appears that some of us are farther down the road on the journey, we're all really the same horizontally. He's just, as far as people being older, you know, and that the whole thing is really, just like that saying goes, we're all just really walking each other home, you know, and like we're talking about, and home is deep within your heart chakra. That's where the kingdom is. So that's the end of this message, and then we'll move on into our meditation, okay, and then we'll journal. And then during the journaling part, we're gonna pass the plate, and then if, during that part, since I don't need a journal because I already prepared, if anybody wants a prayer or something, feel free to come up here and we'll pray, okay? So I've really worked on the chakra meditation. I rewrote it, and then I've got some cool music to go with it. So, hang on. This is weird being in this great big room.